As Mike Tyson sat quietly on a subway bench, just another man riding the train, a racist gang leader and his crew mistook him for easy prey. Armed with knives, chains and numbers, they attacked, but in seconds the car became a ring, and Tyson turned their pride into rubble. Humiliated, the gang swore revenge, gathering even more men for a final ambush. The subway platform erupted into chaos, 30 against 1, but Tyson dismantled them all with ruthless precision. And when the leader, battered and broken, was forced to his knees before the cameras, the world learned a brutal truth: you never pick a fight with Iron Mike. Subscribe and like this video to see how the story unfolds. The late-night train rattled through the city like a tired beast. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead, and the car smelled faintly of steel, oil, and the faint aroma of cheap fast food brought on by passengers. People were scattered in the seats, some dozing off, some staring blankly at their phones, others shifting uncomfortably in the cold air blasting from the vents. Mike Tyson sat quietly near the back, dressed in a plain grey hoodie and dark jeans. He had his hood up, his broad shoulders slightly hunched, his massive hands resting loosely on his knees. To the casual eye, he looked like just another tired commuter heading home. But the way he carried himself was different. Calm, quiet, yet radiating the coiled energy of a man who had spent decades training his body into a weapon. He wasn't there to be noticed. He just wanted peace. But peace never lasts long when hate walks in. At the next stop, the doors hissed open and 4 men piled into the car. Their laughter was loud, their voices sharp, carrying the edge of arrogance that instantly shifted the atmosphere. Heads turned, people shrank deeper into their seats. The gang wasn't just loud, they were predatory. Leather jackets, heavy boots, and the stench of booze hung on them like armor. They swaggered down the aisle, bumping into people deliberately, tossing insults as they went. "Move your legs, old man," one snarled, kicking at a passenger's shin. "Look at this one," another sneered, pointing at a woman clutching her purse. "What you hiding in there, lady?" "Don't worry, we'll find out." Passengers kept their heads down, praying not to be noticed. But then one of them spotted Tyson. "Hey!" the tallest of the 4 muttered, his eyes narrowing. He was wiry, with a scar slicing across his cheek and a knife handle poking from his jacket pocket. "You see this guy? Sitting there like he owns the place?" The others turned, following his gaze. Tyson didn't move. His hood shadowed his face, but his eyes were calm, steady, focused on the floor as if he hadn't noticed them. But he had. He noticed everything: the way they moved, the smell of alcohol on their breath, the faint bulge of weapons under their clothes. The gang leader smirked. "What you looking at, huh? You think you're better than us?" Tyson said nothing. That silence was gasoline to their fire. "Hey!" another barked, shoving a passenger out of the way as he stomped closer. "He's ignoring us." "You don't ignore us, man. You show respect." The leader stepped forward, pulling the knife from his pocket, flipping it in his hand. The blade caught the flickering light, gleaming cold and sharp. Passengers gasped, eyes wide, hands clutching their phones, but no one dared move. They were trapped in a sealed car with a gang of armed men and a stranger who seemed to be their chosen target. "Stand up, old man," the leader sneered, waving the blade. "We're talking to you." Finally, Tyson looked up. His hood slid back slightly, revealing his face. Recognition rippled through the car, eyes widened, mouths fell open. They knew that face. Everyone knew that face. But the gang didn't. They saw only a black man staring back at them with quiet confidence. "I don't want trouble," Tyson said softly. His voice was calm, steady, almost gentle, but it carried weight, like distant thunder. The leader smirked, twirling the knife. "You already found it." One of the others laughed, a cruel, high-pitched sound. "Let's teach him what happens when you disrespect us." The leader lunged, the knife flashing in the harsh light. Passengers screamed. A woman clutched her child close. Someone fumbled for the emergency button but froze, terrified the gang would notice. Tyson didn't flinch, his eyes locked on the blade, his body still. Then in a blur, he moved. The leader's wrist was caught mid-swing, Tyson's massive hand clamping down like a steel trap. The gang leader's grin vanished, replaced by shock as he tried to pull free, but Tyson's grip was unbreakable. "Bad move," Tyson said, his voice low. With a twist, Tyson wrenched the knife from the man's hand. The blade clattered to the floor, skidding across the car. Gasps rippled through the passengers. The leader staggered back, clutching his wrist, his face pale with sudden realization. "What the—" Before he could finish, Tyson's fist snapped forward, slamming into his gut. The impact echoed like a gunshot in the train car. The leader doubled over, choking, collapsing to his knees as his crew shouted in panic. "You shouldn't have done that," Tyson said, his voice calm but deadly. The other three rushed him at once, fury and desperation driving them forward. One swung a chain, another pulled a second knife, the third lunged barefisted. Tyson moved like lightning. He ducked under the chain, his elbows smashing into the man's ribs, sending him sprawling into the seats. The second came at him with the knife, but Tyson sidestepped, grabbing his wrist and slamming his fist into the thug's jaw. Teeth flew, blood sprayed, and the knife fell useless to the floor. The third tried to tackle him, but Tyson pivoted, grabbing him by the jacket and hurling him into the steel pole at the center of the car. The man hit with a sickening thud, crumpling instantly. The train was chaos. Passengers screamed, some cheering, others frozen in awe as Mike Tyson dismantled the gang with terrifying efficiency. The leader, gasping for breath on the floor, scrambled backward, eyes wide with shock. "Who the hell are you?" he wheezed. Tyson stepped forward, his shadow swallowing the man whole. His voice was quiet, but it carried more weight than any shout. "I'm Mike Tyson." The leader's face drained of color. His mouth opened, but no words came. Around them, passengers gasped, whispering his name in disbelief. Phones shot up, recording. The world was watching now. And for the gang, the nightmare was only beginning. The name hit the gang leader like a punch harder than anything Tyson had thrown. Mike Tyson. The words echoed in his mind and his blood turned cold. Around the car, passengers gasped. Some whispered to one another in disbelief. "That's Mike Tyson, the boxer." Oh my God. Phones lit up everywhere, catching every angle of the confrontation. The leader tried to mask his fear with bravado. His voice wavered. "I don't care who you are. Nobody disrespects us." Tyson tilted his head, his dark eyes narrowing. His calmness was more terrifying than rage. "You disrespected yourself the moment you stepped on this train." The leader's men scrambled back to their feet, clutching at their bruises and bloodied mouths. One still had the chain, the links clinking menacingly as he swung it. Another wiped blood from his lips, his teeth broken. The third staggered up, fists trembling with rage. "Get him!" the leader barked, though his voice cracked. The three rushed again, desperation in their eyes. Tyson stepped forward. His movements were clean, fluid, devastatingly efficient. He didn't just fight, he dissected. The first thug swung the chain. Tyson ducked low, his shoulder slamming into the man's gut. With one smooth motion, Tyson grabbed the chain and yanked, pulling the man off balance before smashing his forehead into the thug's nose. Blood spurted as the man dropped with a groan. The second came in, swinging wildly, his fists sloppy with rage. Tyson slipped the first punch, parried the second with a flick of his massive hand, then countered with an uppercut so sharp it lifted the man off his feet. His body thudded against the ceiling before crumpling to the floor. Gasps rippled through the passengers. The third thug lunged with a wild yell. Tyson's fist was already waiting. A hook snapped the thug's head sideways, and he collapsed instantly, unconscious before he hit the ground. The crowd erupted in cheers. Some passengers clapped, others shouted Tyson's name. The chant began faintly at first. "Tyson! Tyson!" The leader staggered back, his knife already lost, his friends broken. Panic seeped into his eyes, but pride, the same arrogance that fueled him, refused to let him collapse just yet. "You think you're a hero?" he spat, though his voice shook. "You think beating us makes you better?" Tyson stepped closer, his shadow engulfing the man. "No, I don't think. I know." The leader swung blindly, his fist connecting with Tyson's chest. It was like punching stone. Tyson didn't flinch. He simply stared. "You're done," Tyson said. The leader stumbled back, crashing into a row of seats. Passengers pressed away, terrified but glued to the scene. Tyson followed, his every step deliberate. "You came onto this train looking for a victim," Tyson said, his voice calm, booming in the silent car. "But you picked a fight with someone who's spent his entire life fighting men tougher than you and beating them."
He reached down and yanked the leader up by the front of his jacket, lifting him until his feet dangled above the floor. The man's hands clawed at Tyson's grip, his eyes wide with terror.
"Now!" Tyson growled. "You're going to learn respect." Gasps filled the car as Tyson hurled the leader down the aisle like he weighed nothing. The man skidded along the floor, crashing into the steel pole at the center of the car. He groaned, clutching his ribs, his pride shattering along with his body.
Tyson stalked forward. The leader tried to crawl away, but Tyson's massive hand clamped down on his ankle, dragging him back across the floor. Sparks flew as his belt buckle scraped against the steel.
The chant grew louder now. "Tyson! Tyson! Tyson!" The leader screamed. "Stop! Please stop!"
Tyson bent low, his face inches from the man's. His voice was a growl. "Did you stop when you scared those women? Did you stop when you kicked that old man? You don't get to beg now."
The leader whimpered, his pride finally collapsing. "I'm sorry. I didn't know." Tyson cut him off with a brutal slam against the side of the car. The metal dented under the impact, the noise deafening. The leader's body sagged, his eyes rolling back briefly before snapping open again in panic. "You didn't care who I was when you pulled that knife," Tyson snarled. "So don't pretend now."
Passengers screamed, phones capturing every angle, live streams exploding with viewers. The entire world was about to witness this brutal lesson.
Tyson pulled the leader upright again and shoved him against the pole, holding him there with one hand. His other fist hovered inches from the man's face. "You ever try this again?" Tyson said, his voice low, deadly. "And you won't walk away." The leader trembled, nodding frantically, his swollen lips whispering, "Yes, yes." Tyson let go. The man crumpled to the floor, gasping, clutching his ribs. The crowd cheered wildly. Some passengers were in tears, others clapped furiously. The chant roared, filling the train like an anthem. "Tyson! Tyson! Tyson!" As the train screeched into the next station, the doors hissed open. The passengers spilled out, phones still raised, shouting what they had just seen. The few who stayed kept their cameras trained on Tyson, their eyes wide with awe. The gang, broken and humiliated, scrambled out as fast as their injuries allowed, dragging each other along the platform, their pride left behind in the train car. Tyson sat back down, pulling his hood over his head again. His breathing slowed, his eyes calm once more. To him, it wasn't a show, it was simple. A father, a fighter, a man who wouldn't let evil go unchecked. But for everyone who witnessed it, it was a story they would never forget. The train screeched into the next station, brakes whining against steel. The doors hissed open and the gang tumbled out, dragging each other onto the platform. Their jackets were torn, their faces bruised and swollen, their pride shattered in front of strangers who were already uploading videos of their humiliation. The leader, clutching his ribs, staggered against the tiled wall of the station. His breath came in ragged gasps. Blood trickled from the corner of his mouth. His hands shook, not from pain, but from rage.
"You see him?" one of the men groaned, clutching his jaw. "That was—"
"Don't say his name," the leader barked, his voice cracking. "Don't you dare!"
But it was too late. Everyone in that train car had seen. Everyone with a phone was already blasting his name across the internet. Mike Tyson, the man they tried to mug, the man who broke them in front of the world.
The gang limped down the platform, hissing in pain, but their anger burned hotter than their wounds. "He made us look weak," one of them spat, his teeth red with blood.
"He humiliated us," another snarled. The leader's eyes blazed. "Nobody humiliates me. Nobody makes me kneel in front of a crowd. I don't care if he's some washed-up boxer. I'll put him down myself." "You saw what he did to us," one muttered. "We didn't even touch him."
The leader's lip curled into a sneer. "That's because we weren't ready. We came at him drunk, sloppy. Next time we come ready, next time we bring more. He won't walk away again." Back inside the train car, Tyson remained seated in the same quiet spot, his hood pulled up, his head bowed. Around him, the passengers buzzed with excitement. "That was really him," one teenager whispered, phone trembling in his hand. "That was Mike Tyson." "I've never seen anything like that," a woman said, holding her child close. Her eyes shimmered with awe. "He saved us." People crowded closer, trying to film him, trying to talk to him, but Tyson kept his head down. His breathing was steady, his body relaxed, as if what had just happened was nothing more than a minor disturbance. But inside, a storm brewed. Tyson's mind flashed to his daughters. He pictured them riding this same train one day, walking through this same city, vulnerable to the same kind of hate he'd just faced. His jaw tightened. "I can't be everywhere," he thought grimly. "But I can be here now." The train rocked as it sped toward the next station. Tyson adjusted his hood, sinking deeper into his seat. He didn't care about the whispers, the cameras, the social media frenzy that was already exploding outside these walls. What mattered was simple. He wasn't going to let evil go unanswered. And if they came back, he would be ready.
On the street above, the gang regrouped in the shadows of the station entrance. The leader leaned against a lamppost, his hand shaking as he lit a cigarette. His face was swollen, his pride shredded, but his voice was steady with venom.
"We find him," he muttered. "We make an example out of him. Knife, chain, whatever it takes, I don't care. He's going to bleed." The others nodded, anger eclipsing their fear. But deep down, under the rage, a question gnawed at them. Could they really take down the man who dismantled them in seconds? The man who moved like no one they'd ever faced before?
The leader's sneer deepened. "He's just a man. Everyone bleeds, and I'll prove it."
The night dragged on. The train rattled through tunnels, carrying Tyson toward his destination. The air in the car was thick with unspoken gratitude from the passengers, but none of them dared to approach him. He sat in silence, his hands resting on his knees, his mind calm. But his senses were sharp. He felt the eyes of the crowd, heard the whispers, noticed the shadows in the corners of the car. He knew men like that gang. He'd seen them his whole life. He knew they wouldn't let it go. Their pride wouldn't allow it. "They'll be back," he thought. His lips curved into the faintest smirk. "And when they come, I'll be waiting." Above ground, the gang spread word to their contacts. More men joined their circle, angry, reckless, drawn by the promise of revenge. Bottles were passed around, blades sharpened, plans whispered in dark corners. "Next time he won't see it coming," the leader said, his eyes burning. "Next time he's the one who goes down." But the truth was, deep inside, fear gnawed at him. He could still feel Tyson's grip on his wrist, like steel crushing bone. He could still hear the chants of the passengers echoing in his skull. "Tyson! Tyson!" And that was the worst wound of all, the humiliation. By the time the train screeched into Tyson's final stop, the night air above was alive with rage and whispers of vengeance. The gang wasn't done,
and Tyson knew it. As he rose from his seat, pulling his hood tighter, he caught the eyes of the passengers around him. Some nodded respectfully, others whispered thanks.
But Tyson didn't respond. He stepped onto the platform, his shoulders broad, his stride calm. He wasn't afraid, he never was, because the gang had chosen the wrong man. And the next time they tried, there would be no mercy. The station smelled of smoke, grease, and rage. The gang huddled near the exit, their bruises glowing purple under the streetlights. The leader leaned forward, his ribs aching every time he drew breath. He flicked his cigarette into the gutter, his eyes sharp with hate. "He made us look weak," he hissed, in front of everyone. "You saw them, filming, laughing, chanting his name. That can't be the last word. I won't let it."
One of the bruised thugs shifted uncomfortably. "But that was Mike Tyson. He's—"
The leader spun on him, jabbing a finger into his chest. "I don't care if he's the Pope or the President. He bleeds like everyone else, and tonight we make sure of it." The others nodded, fear swallowed by fury.
The call went out. Phones buzzed, words passed like wildfire. Within an hour, reinforcements arrived, men from other blocks, leather jackets and knives gleaming, brass knuckles slipped onto fists. Some carried bottles wrapped in rags, others heavy chains that clinked as they walked.
"This him?" one asked, a thick scar running down his temple.
The leader spat blood and nodded. Yeah, some washed-up boxer thinks he's still dangerous. We'll show him what real danger looks like.
The new arrivals grinned, their teeth yellow in the dim light. "Then let's hunt." Meanwhile, Tyson walked the darkened street outside the station. His hood was up, his pace steady, his massive hands tucked into the pocket of his hoodie. To the strangers passing by, he looked like just another tired man heading home after a long day, but Tyson's ears caught everything: the whispers, the faint echoes of boots behind him, the way shadows shifted unnaturally at the edge of his vision. He didn't turn. He didn't need to. "They're regrouping," he thought calmly. "Good. Saves me the trouble of finding them later." His lips curved into the faintest smirk. Back at the platform, the gang leader paced, his breath ragged. His men were hyped now, their weapons ready, their bloodlust replacing the fear they'd carried out of the train earlier. "He humiliated me," the leader repeated, as if the words themselves stoked his rage. "On video." "On everyone's video. Do you know what that means? People will laugh at me. People will think I'm weak." The scarred man chuckled darkly. "Then we make sure those same cameras catch something else. Him bleeding, him begging. You'll get your pride back, and we'll have a story nobody forgets." The leader's lips curled into a smile. "Exactly. We finished this on the train, where it started." The plan was simple. They'd spread out across 2 cars, cornering Tyson in the middle. No witnesses could interfere, no escape. As the next train screeched into the station, they piled in, scattering into their places. The metal doors slammed shut, and the car rattled back into the dark tunnels. Passengers shifted nervously, sensing the danger but powerless to act. Phones stayed hidden this time. No one wanted to draw attention. The gang sat quietly, eyes scanning for their target. And when Tyson finally stepped onto the car 2 stops later, the leader's heart skipped. "There he is," he whispered. Tyson entered calmly, his hood still low. His hands remained in his pockets as he took a seat near the rear of the car, exactly where he'd been before. The leader smirked. "Right where we want him." One by one, the gang members spread out, taking seats around him, slowly boxing him in. The scarred man slid into the row opposite. Another leaned against the pole near the door, gripping his chain. The leader stood at the center of the aisle, his bruised face twisting into a grin. Passengers glanced nervously at Tyson, recognizing the setup, but no one dared speak. The train rattled on. "You came back," the leader said, his voice carrying through the car. "Guess you weren't smart enough to stay gone." Tyson looked up slowly, his eyes calm, unflinching. "Guess you weren't smart enough to let it go." The leader's smile vanished. "You think this is a game? You think you can embarrass me and just walk away?" Tyson tilted his head slightly. "I didn't embarrass you. You embarrassed yourself."
Gasps rippled through the passengers. The gang members bristled, their hands twitching toward weapons.
The leader sneered. "You won't be so smug in a minute." With a nod, he signaled. The scarred man pulled a knife, its blade flashing under the harsh lights. Another uncoiled his chain with a metallic clink. Brass knuckles gleamed on a third's hand. The air thickened with menace.
Tyson sighed, leaning back slightly in his seat. "You boys really didn't learn the first time, did you?"
The leader growled. "The first time it was just us 4. This time it's everyone." The gang tightened the circle, closing in. Passengers pressed back into their seats, some hiding their faces, others trembling. "Get him!" the leader snarled.
The scarred man lunged first, the knife slashing forward. Tyson's hand shot up, faster than the eye could follow, and caught his wrist mid-strike. With a twist, the blade clattered to the floor.
Gasps erupted. Tyson rose from his seat in one fluid motion, towering over the scarred man. His fist snapped forward, smashing into the man's jaw. The thug dropped instantly, his body bouncing against the seats.
The chain wielder swung next, the steel links whistling through the air. Tyson ducked, the chain grazing the hood of his sweatshirt. He stepped in, grabbed the chain mid-swing, and yanked the thug off balance before driving his fist into his gut. The man crumpled, wheezing.
The leader's eyes widened as Tyson straightened, his glare cutting through the car like fire. "You wanted round 2?" Tyson said, his voice low but booming. "You got it!" The passengers erupted in whispers. Some pulled out their phones again, recording despite the danger. The chant began, faint at first. "Tyson, Tyson." The leader snarled, his pride screaming louder than his fear. He pulled a knife of his own and pointed it at Tyson. "This time you don't walk away." Tyson's lips curved into a dangerous smile. "We'll see." The train rocked on, its car now an arena, and the fight was only beginning. The train roared through the underground tunnels, the fluorescent lights flickering in jagged intervals. Every lurch of the car seemed to mimic the rising tension inside. The passengers pressed themselves into their seats, gripping armrests and clutching bags, their eyes locked on the storm brewing at the center of the aisle. Mike Tyson stood tall, his hood pushed back, his eyes locked on the gang that had cornered him. His fists rested loose at his sides, but his stance radiated the menace of a predator who knew exactly what he was doing. The leader, knife gleaming in his hand, sneered through swollen lips. "What's the matter, Tyson? You think you're still the champ? You're old, you're slow, and there's too many of us this time." Tyson's lips curled into the faintest smirk. "You brought an army, and you're still outnumbered." The words hung in the air like a challenge, igniting the gang's fury. With a roar, 3 men lunged at once. One swung a chain, the steel links whistling through the air. Another lunged low with a brass-knuckled fist. The third aimed to tackle Tyson from behind. Tyson moved like lightning. He sidestepped the chain, his massive hand snatching it mid-swing. In one fluid motion, he yanked the thug forward and smashed his elbow into the man's nose. The sickening crack echoed through the car, and blood sprayed across the seats. The man dropped instantly. Before the brass knuckles could connect, Tyson pivoted, his fist driving straight into the attacker's temple. The blow was so precise, it knocked the thug sideways into the pole, his body limp as he slid to the floor. The one from behind wrapped his arms around Tyson's torso, trying to drag him down. Tyson flexed, muscles surging under his hoodie, and shrugged him off like he weighed nothing. With a roar, Tyson spun and hurled the man over his shoulder, his body slamming onto the train floor with a thud that rattled the windows. Gasps filled the car. Passengers screamed, some cheering, others covering their mouths in disbelief. Phones rose higher, recording every brutal second. The chant began again, louder this time. "Tyson! Tyson! Tyson!"
The gang leader's sneer faltered. His knife hand shook, but pride glued his feet to the floor.
"You don't scare me!" he shouted, though his voice cracked with panic.
Tyson's eyes locked on him, cold and unblinking. "Then you're dumber than you look."
2 more gang members rushed from the next car, shoving passengers aside as they joined the fray. One carried a broken bottle, jagged glass glinting under the light. The other swung a heavy wrench.
Tyson didn't move until they were close. Then, in a blur, he stepped forward.
The bottle swung wide. Tyson ducked under it and drove his fist into the thug's ribs. The man dropped the bottle instantly, crumpling to the floor with a howl. Tyson grabbed him by the back of the neck and hurled him into the other attacker just as the wrench came down. The 2 bodies collided, crashing into the row of seats. Passengers screamed, some leaping out of their seats, others pointing phones like reporters capturing history. The leader's face twisted with rage. "Kill him!" he roared. The remaining thugs surged forward in a wave, 5 men in total, knives, chains, fists flying. Tyson planted his feet in the center of the aisle. His fists rose, his shoulders loose, his body relaxed. To the untrained eye, he looked vulnerable. To anyone who knew boxing, he was perfect, poised, balanced, untouchable. The first knife flashed. Tyson weaved left, the blade missing by inches, then countered with a crushing hook to the ribs. The thug folded like paper. The second swung wildly with a chain. Tyson stepped inside, dodging the arc, and launched an uppercut so powerful it sent the man sprawling backward into a row of passengers, who scrambled away screaming. The third tried a blind tackle. Tyson pivoted, let the man's momentum carry him forward, then hammered both fists down on his back like sledgehammers. The thug collapsed face first to the floor. The fourth swung a punch. Tyson slipped it easily, then delivered a lightning-fast jab-cross combination, each blow snapping the man's head sideways until he toppled over. The fifth froze, staring at Tyson with wide eyes, then dropped his knife and backed away. "No, man! No, I'm done!" Tyson didn't chase him. He turned back to the leader, his glare burning like fire. The train car was chaos. Passengers cheered, some cried, many shouted Tyson's name. The chant was deafening now. "Tyson! Tyson! Tyson!" The leader stood alone, his knife trembling in his hand, his pride hanging by a thread. "You don't scare me," he whispered again, though it sounded more like a prayer than defiance. Tyson stepped forward slowly, each step deliberate. The ground seemed to shake with his presence. "You came at me with numbers," Tyson said, his voice calm, almost gentle. "But numbers don't win fights. Skill does, heart does, discipline does."
He stopped inches away, his towering frame swallowing the leader in shadow. "And you? You don't have any of it."
The leader lunged with a desperate yell, the knife flashing upward. Tyson's hand moved faster. He caught the leader's wrist mid-swing, twisting until the blade clattered to the floor. The leader cried out, but Tyson didn't let go. He yanked the man forward and slammed his forehead against the steel pole with a dull thunk. The leader sagged, blood dripping from his brow. Tyson shoved him back, his massive fist cocked. "This ends now," Tyson said, his voice low, deadly. The leader trembled, his swollen lips quivering. "Please." Tyson didn't swing, yet. He leaned close, his voice a growl that carried through the car. "You picked the wrong train. You picked the wrong man. And now you're going to pay." Gasps rippled through the passengers. Phones zoomed in, capturing every detail. The leader whimpered, blood pooling at his feet. Tyson's fist hovered inches from his jaw. But Tyson didn't punch, not yet. He wanted the moment to hang, to burn into the man's memory forever. And as the train rattled into the next station, the entire world watching through live streams knew one thing: the fight was far from over. The train clattered through the tunnels, the rhythmic screech of wheels grinding against steel, barely rising above the roar of the passengers. Phones hovered like glowing lanterns, capturing the scene from every angle. Some commuters leaned over seats shouting Tyson's name, while others cowered, terrified of the violence unfolding. And there, in the center of it all, stood Mike Tyson, a mountain of calm fury. Around him lay the wreckage of men, groaning, clutching ribs, wiping blood from their mouths. Only one man still stood, trembling but desperate, the gang leader. His knife lay on the floor, glinting under the harsh lights. His chest heaved, his eyes darting from Tyson to the passengers, searching for a way out that didn't exist. "Pick it up," Tyson said, his voice low, dangerous. The leader froze, sweat dripping down his brow. "Go on," Tyson urged, nodding to the knife. "Pick it up. Show them what you're made of." The leader's pride screamed louder than his fear. With a snarl, he snatched the knife from the floor and raised it high. His hand shook, but his voice rose with false bravado. "You think you can break me?" he spat. "I'll cut you open right here." Tyson's lips curled into a smile that sent chills through everyone watching. "Then come on." The car fell silent. Even the rattling of the train seemed to fade as the two men faced off, one a broken thug with a trembling blade, the other a legend who had spent his life mastering the art of destruction. The leader lunged, the knife arced downward, flashing in the light. Tyson stepped aside with impossible speed, his hand snapping out to catch the man's wrist. Gasps echoed as Tyson twisted, the blade spinning free. It clattered against the floor again, sliding under a seat. Before the leader could react, Tyson's other fist crashed into his jaw. The man staggered back, his body whipping sideways. He stumbled into a pole, nearly collapsing. Tyson advanced, his fists rose, his stance shifting, his shoulders loose. Suddenly the train wasn't a subway car anymore. It was the ring. The passengers felt it. They weren't just watching a fight. They were watching history. Tyson threw a jab, sharp, fast, snapping the leader's head back. He followed with another, then a third, each one landing with brutal precision. The leader's arms flailed, his fists too slow, his defense non-existent. "Move!" Tyson barked, his voice echoing in the cramped car. "Move! Show me what you've got!" The leader swung blindly, but Tyson weaved left, his body moving like water. He countered with a hook to the ribs. The crack echoed. The man groaned, his knees buckling. The passengers screamed, the chant beginning again. "Tyson! Tyson! Tyson!" The leader tried to back away, but Tyson cut him off, driving him into the corner of the car. His fists blurred, a flurry of jabs and hooks that battered the thug like a heavy bag. Each blow landed with surgical precision, snapping his head sideways, rocking his body. "Too slow!" Tyson roared. Another jab. "Too sloppy!" A hook to the ribs. "Too weak!" An uppercut that lifted him off his feet.
The leader crumpled to his knees, blood dripping from his mouth, his eyes glassy. But Tyson wasn't done.
He grabbed the man by the collar, yanking him upright, forcing him to stand. His voice thundered, shaking the walls. "You came at me with a knife. You thought you could scare me, but look at you now, broken, bleeding, nothing."
The leader sobbed, his pride finally shattering. "Please, I can't."
Tyson's glare burned hotter. "You weren't saying that when you tried to stab me." He cocked his fist back, the muscles in his arm coiling like steel cables. The crowd gasped, phones zooming in, waiting for the knockout. The punch landed square on the man's jaw, his body lifted off the ground before slamming to the floor, limp and unconscious. The car erupted. Passengers screamed, clapped, stomped their feet. The chant shook the train. "Tyson! Tyson! Tyson!" But Tyson wasn't celebrating. He stood over the fallen leader, his fists still clenched, his chest heaving. His eyes scanned the car, meeting the terrified gazes of the remaining gang members who were still conscious. "Pick him up," Tyson growled. Two thugs hesitated, glancing at each other. "I said, pick him up." They scrambled, dragging the limp body upright, holding the leader between them. His head lolled, blood dripping from his split lip. Tyson stepped closer, his shadow swallowing them. "Tell him," he said. The men blinked. "What?" "Tell him who he just fought." One thug stammered. "Mike Tyson."
The other whispered it louder. "You fought Mike Tyson."
The words carried through the car, hitting every ear, every phone recording. The passengers screamed, the chant surging again. "Mike Tyson! Mike Tyson!" The leader groaned, barely conscious, his body shaking. His pride, his gang, his reputation, it was all gone. Tyson leaned closer, his voice low but deadly. "Now the whole world knows, and you'll never forget."
He turned away, leaving the leader sagging in his men's arms. Tyson pulled his hood back up and returned to his seat as if nothing had happened. His breathing slowed, his hands resting on his knees again.
The passengers stared in awe. Some whispered prayers, others wept. Many simply kept filming, knowing they had just witnessed something that would live online forever. The train screeched into the next station, the doors hissing open. A flood of people poured out, shouting Tyson's name, spreading the story before the night was even over. And Tyson sat quietly, eyes calm, as if the storm hadn't even touched him. The subway car rattled and screeched, diving deeper into the tunnels, as if the city itself wanted to hide the violence unfolding within its steel belly. The air was hot, heavy with the stench of sweat, iron, and fear. Bodies sprawled across the floor, broken, groaning, gasping. The gang's so-called army, now reduced to wreckage, lay at Tyson's feet like offerings to some ancient god of war. And yet the fight wasn't over.
Mike Tyson sat back down in his corner of the car, his hood low, his breathing steady. He looked almost serene, as though he had just finished a light workout rather than dismantling a dozen armed thugs. But his stillness wasn't weakness. It was coiled energy, the kind of deadly calm that only predators carried, the quiet before they struck again.
Across the aisle, the remnants of the gang pulled themselves together. 3 men still stood, their eyes wide, their bodies shaking from adrenaline and dread. 2 more were barely upright, leaning on poles, clutching their ribs and faces, muttering curses under their breath. The leader, unconscious but breathing, slumped against his men like a sack of broken pride. The passengers didn't dare move. They sat glued to their seats, their phones up like shields, filming every breath, every stare, every twitch of Tyson's fists. The chant that had electrified the car earlier had died into hushed whispers. Everyone was waiting. The tension was so thick it felt like the air had weight. One of the standing thugs spat blood onto the floor and glared at Tyson. His voice trembled, but his words carried hate. "This ain't over," he snarled. "You think you can walk out of here like some hero? We'll bury you before this night's done." Tyson lifted his head slowly, his eyes piercing through the hood's shadow. He didn't speak right away. He let the silence drag, let it sink into their bones. Then, softly but with iron in his tone, he answered, "You had your chance, and I let you live."
The thug flinched as if the words themselves had struck him. Another stepped forward, gripping a bent knife he'd salvaged from the floor. "You ain't walking away." "Not tonight."
Tyson leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. His lips curled into something between a smirk and a snarl. "Then come find out." The subway lights flickered. For a split second, the car plunged into darkness. In that moment, everything snapped. Rage, pride, desperation. The three standing gang members roared and lunged. The knife wielder slashed downward, aiming for Tyson's chest. The second swung a chain with both hands, the steel links hissing through the air. The third charged head-on, trying to tackle Tyson into the row of seats. But Tyson was already moving.
He exploded upward from his seat like a cannon blast. The knife cut air, missing by inches. Tyson's left fist shot forward, hammering into the knife wielder's throat. The man gagged, stumbling back, his weapon clattering uselessly to the floor.
The chain came next, swinging wild. Tyson ducked under it, stepped inside the thug's reach, and drove an uppercut straight into his chin. The blow snapped his head back with a crack that echoed off the walls. He dropped instantly, sprawled across the floor. The third thug slammed into Tyson's torso, arms wrapping around him, trying to drive him back. But grabbing Tyson was like grabbing a steel pillar. He didn't budge. Instead, he hooked one arm around the thug's neck, spun, and hurled him face first into the pole. The impact rang through the car like a church bell. The man collapsed, twitching. 3 attacks, 3 bodies down. Tyson barely broke a sweat. Passengers screamed, some cheering, others gasping into their phones. The chant returned, louder now, filling the air like thunder. "Tyson! Tyson! Tyson!" But Tyson wasn't looking at them. His gaze locked on the 2 thugs still standing, the ones propping up their unconscious leader. "Put him down," Tyson growled.
They froze. "I said, put him down!"
Shaking, they let the limp leader slide to the floor. His head lolled to the side, blood dripping down his temple. The sight enraged them, but their fear rooted them in place. Tyson stepped forward, his presence filling the entire aisle. "You dragged a knife onto this train, you terrorized innocent people. You thought you could break me." His voice rose, booming against the steel walls. "Now you're going to learn what it feels like to kneel." The taller of the 2 thugs roared, trying to summon courage from rage. He ripped a wrench from his belt and swung it wildly. Tyson didn't move until the very last second. Then, with a sidestep, he slipped the blow and countered with a jab to the man's jaw. The thug staggered, dazed. Tyson followed with a hook to the ribs, then another to the stomach, folding him over. He grabbed the back of the thug's head and smashed his face into his rising knee. Blood exploded from his nose as he collapsed to the floor.
The last conscious thug dropped to his knees instantly, hands raised in surrender.
"I'm done! I'm done!" he cried. His voice cracked, fear stripping away every ounce of his earlier bravado. Tyson loomed over him, eyes burning. "You weren't done when you pulled your knife. You weren't done when you jumped me. You're done now because you're broken."
The thug nodded frantically, tears welling. "Please, no more." Tyson grabbed him by the collar and yanked him to his feet. He pressed him against the window, his massive fist hovering inches from the thug's face.
"Look around," Tyson growled. The thug obeyed, his eyes darting to the carnage. The broken bodies of his crew sprawled across the floor, the leader unconscious in a pool of blood, the passengers staring in awe and horror.
This is what happens when you try to take a man's dignity. This is what happens when you think hate makes you strong.
He slammed the thug back against the window. The man whimpered, trembling uncontrollably.
"You got one chance," Tyson said. His fist tightened. "One. Walk away, never come back, or you end up like them." The thug nodded so fast his neck cracked. Yes, I swear."
Tyson shoved him aside, letting him collapse to the floor. The train screeched as it slowed into the next station. The doors hissed open, and the smell of fresh air rushed into the car. Passengers bolted, flooding out onto the platform, still filming, still shouting Tyson's name. Some screamed the story into phones, broadcasting it live to anyone who would listen. Tyson stayed inside, standing tall amid the wreckage. His hood shadowed his face, his chest rising and falling slowly. He didn't look at the cameras. He didn't need to. This wasn't for them. This wasn't about glory or fame. This was about sending a message, and every broken man on the floor had received it loud and clear. Still, Tyson knew it wasn't over. Men like this didn't let go of pride so easily. The leader would wake up, humiliated, vowing revenge. The streets would whisper of this night, of the train that turned into a ring, of the gang that got destroyed by the wrong man. And when stories spread, so did ego. There would be others, but Tyson didn't care. He adjusted his hood, stepped off the train, and melted into the crowd. The city hadn't seen the last of him, and neither had they.
The train doors hissed open, spilling the chaos of the underground onto the platform. A river of passengers surged out, some still screaming Tyson's name, others trembling, clutching phones that still streamed live footage of the carnage inside. The chanting echoed up the tiled stairwells, bouncing off the grimy walls, leaking into the night air of the city above.
But inside the car, silence hung thick. Only groans from the broken gang members and the faint hum of the engine filled the space. Mike Tyson stood alone in the center of the aisle, hood low, breathing steady, his gaze sweeping over the wreckage. One by one, the thugs who could still move crawled or limped out of the car, dragging their unconscious comrades with them. They muttered curses under their breath, but none dared meet Tyson's eyes. Their pride had been shattered. Their leader lay on the floor, blood pooling beneath his head, chest rising and falling faintly. Tyson didn't move to stop them. He didn't need to. The lesson had been taught, or so he thought.
On the platform, the survivors gathered in a ragged circle, gasping for air, spitting blood, and clutching their injuries. The air reeked of sweat and copper. The crowd that had fled the train lingered nearby, whispering, pointing, their phones capturing every second. Already, the story was spiraling across the internet, hashtags exploding, clips replaying with captions. Mike Tyson destroys gang on subway.
But the gang wasn't finished. Pride was a poison, and the leader had drunk deep. He stirred, groaning, his swollen face twitching as consciousness returned. His men rushed to him, hauling him upright. Blood streaked his temple, his lip was split, one eye nearly swollen shut. Yet when his gaze landed on Tyson still standing inside the car, his battered pride roared back to life. He shoved his men aside and staggered forward, coughing blood onto the platform. "No," he rasped. His voice was hoarse, broken, but filled with venom. "No, this ain't over. Not like this. Not with everyone watching."
His men tried to stop him. "Boss, you can't. He'll kill you."
"Shut up," the leader barked, his spit red with blood. "I'm not letting some washed-up boxer clown me in front of the whole city." He turned to the others, his fury igniting theirs. "You see those cameras? You hear those chants? If we don't finish this now, that's it. We're nothing. Everyone will know we got smashed. Everyone will know we bowed to him." The men shifted uneasily, torn between fear and loyalty. Some wanted to run, to disappear into the night and forget this nightmare ever happened. But others clenched their fists, nodding, unwilling to live branded as cowards. The leader pointed toward the station exit. "Go get the others. Call whoever you can. I don't care who. I want numbers. I want weapons. I want him on his knees before this night is done."
Inside the train, Tyson remained still. But his ears picked up every word, his senses sharper than anyone realized. He knew the gang wasn't done. Their pride wouldn't let them.
He tilted his head slightly, almost amused. "They really want another round," he thought. "Fine. But they won't like how it ends." The train's doors slid shut with a metallic clank. The engine rumbled as it prepared to pull away. Tyson could have stayed, let it carry him to another stop, away from the confrontation brewing above. But he didn't. At the last second, he stepped forward, placing his hand between the closing doors. They slid open again with a hiss, and Tyson strode out onto the platform. Gasps erupted. The crowd backed away instinctively, parting like the sea. Phones rose higher, recording the moment. Tyson stood under the harsh fluorescent lights, shoulders squared, hood falling back to reveal his face, calm, unreadable, but radiating power. The leader froze mid-step, his fury faltering for the briefest instant. Then pride shoved fear aside and he bared his teeth. "You should have stayed on that train, old man," he snarled. The platform became an arena. Passengers clung to the walls, police nowhere to be seen yet. The gang circled Tyson again, their numbers smaller, but their hate doubled. Some had scavenged weapons, pipes, bats, another knife. The leader gripped a length of rebar, knuckles white, veins bulging in his forehead. Tyson scanned them slowly, his gaze steady. "You boys just don't learn," he said, his voice low but carrying across the platform. "You think numbers make you strong, but numbers only mean more of you to fall."
The leader roared and charged, swinging the rebar with everything he had.
Tyson sidestepped at the last second. His fist snapped forward, striking the leader's ribs with bone-shattering force. The man screamed, staggering, but Tyson didn't stop. He hammered another blow to the jaw, then a crushing hook to the liver. The leader dropped to one knee, coughing blood.
But before Tyson could finish him, the others attacked.
Two swung pipes in tandem. Tyson ducked the first, blocked the second with his forearm, then countered with a headbutt that sent one thug flying. The other hesitated, too slow. Tyson drove his elbow into his chest, sending him sprawling across the platform tiles. A third lunged with a knife, stabbing toward Tyson's stomach. Tyson twisted, caught his wrist mid-thrust, and with a sharp crack, broke the man's arm. The knife clattered to the ground. Tyson kicked it away, then backhanded the thug so hard he spun and collapsed. The crowd roared, some screaming in horror, others in awe. The chant rose again. "Tyson! Tyson! Tyson!" The leader staggered back to his feet, veins bulging, face twisted with rage and humiliation. "I'll kill you!" he screamed, swinging the rebar again.
Tyson stepped inside the arc, grabbed the bar, and wrenched it free from his hands with ease. Then, with deliberate calm, he bent it in half like it was nothing. The crowd gasped, phones zooming in on the impossible feat.
The leader stumbled backward, eyes wide.
Tyson tossed the bent bar aside. "Fight me like a man if you can."
The leader roared and swung his fists wildly. Tyson ducked, weaved, and unleashed a flurry of jabs that battered the man's face. Blood sprayed. A final uppercut lifted him off his feet, dropping him flat on his back. He didn't get up. The platform fell silent. The last conscious thugs froze, their weapons slipping from nerveless hands. They looked at each other, then at Tyson, then at their broken leader, sprawled in defeat. Fear overcame loyalty. Without a word, they turned and ran, fleeing into the tunnels, disappearing into the night. The crowd erupted, chanting, cheering, crying. Phones flashed, capturing every angle of the aftermath. The story was no longer just rumor. It was legend. Tyson stood in the center, chest rising and falling, his fists lowering slowly. He looked around at the broken bodies, the shattered pride, the wide eyes of strangers who would never forget this night. Then he pulled his hood back up, turned, and walked toward the exit. He didn't need applause. He didn't need thanks. He had done what he always did, faced the storm, and come out stronger. But for the gang, the storm had only just begun. The platform was a battlefield. Shattered weapons lay scattered across the tiles, bent pipes, broken knives, a rebar bar folded neatly in two like paper. Blood smeared the ground, trailed from the lips and noses of men who thought they could turn pride into power. The gang leader lay flat, unconscious again, his chest heaving shallowly, his face a mask of swelling and defeat. His crew was gone. Those still breathing had scattered like roaches into the tunnels, fleeing from the storm they had awakened. And in the middle of it all stood Mike Tyson. His hood shadowed most of his face, but even beneath the harsh flicker of the fluorescent lights, the sheer force of his presence filled the air. He didn't posture, he didn't gloat, his fists lowered to his sides, his breathing slow and steady, like a man stepping out of the gym rather than someone who had just dismantled an entire gang with his bare hands. The silence around him was heavy, then shattered. Phones buzzed as passengers shouted into live streams. "He broke them all!" a woman cried, pointing her camera at Tyson.
"Yo, he bent steel with his bare hands!" another gasped, shoving the feed toward the twisted rebar lying across the floor.
"He's still got it. Iron Mike, baby!" screamed a young man, his voice trembling with excitement. The The chant returned, spilling through the station and up into the city above. "Tyson! Tyson! Tyson!" But Tyson didn't acknowledge it. He turned slowly, his heavy steps echoing as he made for the stairs. His face was calm, but his mind was far from it. The images of the fight replayed in his head, not with pride, but with weight. He thought of his daughters again. He thought of how the gang had lunged at him with knives, chains, bats, on a crowded train filled with children, parents, elders. What if it hadn't been me there tonight? He wondered grimly. What if it had been someone defenseless? That thought burned hotter than any insult. Tyson tightened his jaw. He wasn't angry for himself. He was angry for a world where men thought hate gave them power, where they hunted the weak and laughed while doing it. That was why he hadn't just beaten them. He'd broken their pride. And yet, as he ascended the stairs, he knew the night wasn't finished. The first sirens wailed before he reached street level. Blue and red lights flickered against the grimy tiles. The crowd on the platform parted in chaos as uniformed officers stormed down, guns drawn, hands on batons. Shouts filled the station. "Hands where we can see them." "Step back, everyone, step back!" Tyson stopped halfway up the stairs. He didn't move his hands, didn't flinch, just turned his head slightly. The police froze mid-step when they saw him. The bodies littering the platform told the story. Groaning gang members, bloodstreaks, shattered weapons. Dozens of passengers pointed frantically at Tyson, shouting all at once, "He saved us!" They attacked him first.
He's the reason we're alive. Phones shoved toward the officers, screens replaying shaky footage of the chaos. Tyson dismantling men twice his size, Tyson catching a knife barehanded, Tyson bending rebar like it was a straw, Tyson standing over a dozen broken bodies. The police hesitated, eyes darting from the screens to the carnage, to the man himself. Tyson remained silent, calm, his hood low.
One officer stepped forward, voice steady but respectful. "Sir, we're going to need you to come with us."
The crowd erupted instantly. "No! He's the hero here."
"Are you blind? He protected us."
"Arrest those cowards, not him." But Tyson raised a hand, quieting them. His deep voice rolled through the air, even and controlled. "It's all right. I'll talk to them."
The officers looked at each other, unsure. Tyson's reputation preceded him, not just as a fighter, but as a man who carried storms with him wherever he went. Nobody wanted to be the one who put cuffs on Mike Tyson in front of a crowd chanting his name. "Sir?" the officer tried again. "We just need to hear your side of the story." Tyson nodded once. "Then let's go."
They guided him out of the station. The crowd followed, a tidal wave of voices and cameras. The city above was alive with chaos, sirens blaring, more police cars pulling up, reporters flooding the scene with microphones raised high. Headlines were already rolling across ticker screens on passing cabs. Mike Tyson's subway fight caught on camera.
But Tyson barely looked at any of it. His gaze stayed forward, his stride steady. He wasn't a man on trial. He was a man walking into the eye of the storm he'd already tamed. Inside the first patrol car, the atmosphere was tense. Officers exchanged uneasy glances as they drove. Tyson sat silently in the back, his broad frame barely fitting the seat. He wasn't handcuffed. Nobody had dared. One officer finally spoke, his voice quiet. "Mr. Tyson, those men back there, they weren't small time. Word is they've got ties. People are saying tonight, you didn't just stop a gang, you declared war on one." Tyson's eyes shifted toward him, calm but sharp. "Then they better think twice before stepping on that train again." The car went silent. Back at the platform, the aftermath unfolded like wildfire. Reporters shoved microphones in the faces of passengers. Videos uploaded to social media spread faster than the police tape could go up. Hashtags trended worldwide. Hashtag Iron Mike. Hashtag Subway Fight. Hashtag Legend Never Dies. Clips looped endlessly, Tyson dismantling thugs one by one, bending the rebar, smashing fists into jaws. Memes sprang up instantly, edits painting him as a gladiator, a warrior risen from the shadows. But deeper in the tunnels, where the blood still smeared the tiles, the humiliation brewed. The surviving gang members dragged their unconscious leader out of sight, nursing their wounds. They muttered curses, swore revenge, plotted in whispers. "This ain't over," one spat, clutching his broken arm.
"He made us a joke," another hissed.
The leader stirred faintly, his swollen lips mumbling through blood. "He's dead. Next time he's dead." Meanwhile, Tyson sat in a precinct room hours later, the lights harsh above him, the smell of stale coffee in the air. Detectives leaned across the table, playing footage on a laptop. Each clip showed the same thing: men armed with knives and chains lunging at him, Tyson dismantling them with clinical precision. "You could have killed them," one detective muttered, almost in awe. Tyson leaned back in his chair, his massive arms folded. His voice was quiet, but thunderous. "If I wanted to kill them, they wouldn't be breathing right now." The room went silent. The detectives glanced at each other, then nodded. One closed the laptop with a sigh. "You're free to go, Mr. Tyson. And for what it's worth." "Thank you." Tyson rose, his chair groaning under his weight. He adjusted his hoodie, nodded once, and walked out. Outside, the world was waiting. Cameras flashed, microphones thrust forward, voices overlapping in chaos. "Mike, what happened on that train? Do you regret your actions?
"Were you afraid for your life?"
Do you think you went too far?" Tyson paused at the top of the precinct steps. The flashbulbs lit his face, casting shadows that made him look even more formidable. He scanned the crowd, his expression unreadable. Then finally he spoke. "They wanted to make me kneel," he said, his voice deep and steady. "But I don't kneel to hate. I don't kneel to cowards. And nobody in this city should either." The crowd erupted.
Tyson turned and walked into the night, his figure swallowed by the flashing lights, his legend growing by the second.
But deep in the city's underbelly, the men he broke were already stirring. Pride burned hotter than pain, and humiliation demanded revenge. Tyson knew they'd come back. He could feel it. And when they did, he'd be ready. The city didn't sleep that night. By midnight, clips of Mike Tyson's subway brawl had gone viral across every platform. Millions had watched the footage, grainy phone videos of a hooded figure rising from a bench and unleashing chaos. Headlines plastered across feeds screamed the same message in bold: "Iron Mike is back." Some hailed him as a savior, others called him a vigilante, but every angle carried the same truth. Mike Tyson had turned a subway car into a ring and destroyed a gang with his bare hands. And while the world watched in awe, another corner of the city burned with rage.
The survivors gathered in a warehouse deep in the industrial district. The building smelled of rust, oil, and stale beer. Its windows were cracked, its walls covered in graffiti tags, a haven for men who thrived in shadows.
They limped in one by one, battered and broken, arms in slings, ribs wrapped in bandages, faces swollen and bruised. Some could barely stand, but they came anyway, because humiliation had bound them tighter than loyalty ever had. At the center of the room, their leader sat slumped on a metal chair. His jaw was wired shut, one eye purple and swollen, his ribs cracked, yet his hands clenched the chair's arms with white-knuckled fury. His pride hadn't broken. If anything, it had hardened into something uglier. The room was silent until he spoke, his voice muffled but seething. "He made me bleed in front of everyone. He made all of you crawl, and the world's laughing at us."
He lifted his head slowly, eyes blazing. "That ends tonight?"
One of the men shifted nervously. "Boss, you saw what he did. We were 20 deep, armed, and he tore through us like nothing."
The leader slammed his hand on the table, making the room flinch. "Because we weren't ready. Because we went in drunk, sloppy, thinking it'd be easy. But next time, we plan. Next time, we take him out clean." Another thug coughed, his ribs wrapped tight. "He's not some street brawler, man. That's Mike Tyson. He's a monster." The leader leaned forward, his voice low and venomous. "I don't care who he is. Legends bleed just like anyone else. And I'll be the one to spill it."
They circled him, whispering among themselves. Fear gnawed at their edges, but hate fanned the flames. They'd been filmed groveling, filmed begging. Their names were being mocked online, their faces turned into memes. On every corner of the internet, strangers laughed at their downfall. For men who survived on intimidation, reputation was everything. And Tyson had ripped it away. One by one, their eyes hardened, their fists clenched, their fear shriveled into resolve. The leader saw it and smirked, blood seeping between his teeth. That's right. We're not done. We hit him harder, we hit him smarter, and we make the whole city forget his name. He pointed at a map sprawled across the table. The subway line was marked, circles drawn at specific stations. Tomorrow night, he growled. We hunt him. But Tyson already knew. He sat in his home hours later, the lights dim, the air filled with the faint hum of the city outside. He hadn't turned on the TV. He didn't need to. He knew the world was talking, knew his name was burning across screens like wildfire. None of that mattered to him. What mattered was the quiet weight in his chest, the storm he knew wasn't finished. Men like that didn't vanish after one beating. Their pride was a chain that dragged them back into the fire.
He sat at his kitchen table, hands clasped, eyes closed. His breathing was slow, steady. But his thoughts were sharp, cutting through the silence.
They'll come again, he whispered. And when they do, it'll be worse. On the counter nearby, his phone buzzed. Messages flooded in, friends, reporters, even strangers. Some cheered him on, others begged for interviews. A few warned him that the gang was hunting for payback. Tyson ignored most of it. But one message caught his eye, a simple note from an old trainer. Remember, Mike, the ring was never just about fists, it was about control. Make them fight your fight. Tyson smiled faintly. That was the truth. Control wasn't about how hard you hit. It was about making the other man fight on your terms. And that was exactly what he planned to do. Meanwhile, in the warehouse, the gang sharpened their fury into steel. Weapons lay across the table, knives polished, chains coiled, bats wrapped with nails. They passed bottles, lit cigarettes, their laughter brittle and sharp. The air buzzed with bravado, but underneath it all, fear still lingered like smoke. One thug muttered, "What if he does it again? What if he smashes us like last time?"
The leader turned, his swollen face twisted into a sneer. Then we don't stop. Even if he breaks us, we keep coming. We drown him in numbers until he can't stand. That's how you kill a legend. The men nodded, their fear buried beneath the need to reclaim their pride.
Back at Tyson's place he stood and stretched. His body ached faintly, but his movements were fluid, precise. He shadow-boxed in the dim kitchen, fists snapping through the air with the same speed that had destroyed the gang hours earlier. His breathing was steady, his footwork sharp. Age hadn't dulled him, it had refined him. Each punch cut through the silence like thunder.
He pictured the gang's faces, their rage, their weapons, their chaos.
And in his mind he dismantled them again and again. When he finally stopped, sweat glistened on his skin. He grabbed a towel, wiped his face, and whispered, "Tomorrow, then." The night stretched on. In the city's veins, the subways, the alleys, the warehouses, two storms gathered. One was fueled by hate, pride, and desperation, swelling in numbers, armed to the teeth. The other was a single man standing alone in the quiet of his home, calm as a mountain, ready to face the fire. And when the two collided, the world would remember. The city had no idea it was sitting on the edge of a storm. By the next evening, the headlines still screamed Mike Tyson's name. News anchors replayed the grainy subway footage like holy scripture, the bent rebar, the flying fists, the gang scattering in panic. Talk show hosts debated whether he was a hero or a vigilante. Clips of chanting passengers filled the feeds, voices rising in unison. "Tyson! Tyson!" But in the underbelly of the city, the place where light rarely reached, pride festered. The gang leader, swollen and broken, hadn't slept. His ribs burned with every breath, his jaw wired shut, but rage numbed the pain. He gathered what was left of his men and called in debts, allies from other blocks, cousins with grudges, outcasts who lived for violence. By sundown, the warehouse was crawling with bodies, nearly 30 men, armed with bats, knives, chains, even a sawed-off shotgun. The leader stood before them, swaying slightly, but his voice roared through the space. "He made us a joke. He made the whole world laugh at us. Tonight, we take it back. Tonight, we don't just fight a man, we kill a legend." The The men roared, banging weapons on the concrete floor. The sound was like thunder rolling through the empty building. Across town, Tyson tied his boots. His hoodie was plain, his face calm. He had slept soundly, his body healing in ways most men's couldn't. He'd eaten a simple meal, stretched, and moved through his old shadowboxing routine. Each jab cut the air with sharpness, each hook carried the weight of decades in the ring. He wasn't nervous, he wasn't angry, he was focused. He knew they'd come, they couldn't live with humiliation, pride would drag them back into his orbit. And when they came, he had only one rule: end it so completely there'd never be a second time. He glanced at his reflection in the mirror. Broad shoulders, fists like hammers, eyes steady as stone. For a moment, he almost smiled. "Let's finish it," he muttered. The night air was heavy as Tyson descended into the subway once again. The city above bustled, oblivious to the storm below. People streamed past him on the stairs, commuters and tourists, none realizing who brushed past in the crowd. Tyson walked with quiet confidence, shoulders square, hood low. To strangers, he was just another man catching a late ride, but beneath that calm exterior, his senses sharpened with each step. The moment his boots hit the platform, he knew the air felt wrong. Too many shadows, too many sets of eyes that didn't belong to commuters. He adjusted his hood and sat on the same bench he'd occupied the night before. Calm, waiting. The gang emerged slowly, like wolves circling prey. First, 2 men leaned against the pillars watching him. Then another pair strolled casually down the stairs, weapons hidden beneath jackets. Then more, filtering onto the platform in 2s and 3s, pretending to be passengers. Soon the entire station seemed crowded, but Tyson knew the truth. They had come for him. He could see the leader limping at the back of the pack, his face swollen, his jaw bound in wire, his eyes blazing with hatred. He leaned heavily on 2 of his men, but his voice carried loud and clear. "There he is," he growled, "sitting like he owns the world. End him." The crowd of commuters froze as weapons appeared. Bats, knives, pipes glinting under the fluorescent lights. Screams erupted. People shoved past each other, bolting for the stairs. The sound of fleeing footsteps echoed like a drumbeat. But Tyson didn't move. He sat there on the bench, elbows resting on his knees, eyes locked on the circle forming around him. His stillness was scarier than any weapon. One thug stepped forward, chain swinging in his hand. "You ain't so tough now, old man." Tyson finally stood.
The air shifted. The gang members shuffled nervously, weapons twitching in their hands. The commuters who hadn't escaped pressed against the walls, phones raised, whispering in awe.
Tyson's voice boomed through the station, steady and unshakable. "You think 30 of you make a difference? 30 of you, 100 of you, it don't matter, because I've been fighting my whole life, and I've beaten men stronger, faster, meaner than you'll ever be." He stepped forward, fists loose, shoulders relaxed. "So come on. Show me what you got." The leader shrieked, spittle flying from his wired jaw. "Kill him!" The station erupted. 5 men rushed first, 2 with bats, 1 with a knife, the others swinging chains. The sound of metal scraping tile filled the air. Tyson moved.
The first bat swung wide. Tyson ducked under it and smashed his fist into the thug's ribs. Bone cracked. The man dropped instantly.
The second bat came down. Tyson blocked with his forearm, then launched a hook that spun the thug sideways into a pillar. His head smacked the steel with a sickening thud. The knife slashed toward his stomach. Tyson stepped inside the thrust, grabbed the attacker's wrist and twisted. The blade dropped. Tyson kneed him in the gut, then smashed an elbow across his jaw. He collapsed. The chains whistled. Tyson caught one mid-swing, yanked the thug off balance and drove his fist straight into the man's throat. He gagged and fell, gasping. 4 down in seconds. The others hesitated. The sound of Tyson's fists landing echoed louder than their courage. The leader roared again, his voice cracking with fury. "He's one man! Get him!"
10 more surged forward. Tyson planted his feet in the center of the platform. His fists rose, his body loose, his stance perfect.
The platform became a ring. The first swung a pipe. Tyson weaved under and countered with a right cross. So fast the man was unconscious before he hit the ground. Another lunged low. Tyson pivoted, let the momentum carry him past, then hammered his fist into the thug's back. He dropped like a sack of bricks. Two more swung together. Tyson ducked, slipped between them, and unleashed a flurry. Jab, hook, uppercut. Both men fell, clutching their faces. The 10th froze, his brass knuckles trembling in his fist. Tyson glared at him, and the man turned and bolted, disappearing into the tunnels. The station was chaos. Screams, chants, the metallic crash of weapons hitting tile. Phones captured every second, streaming the carnage to a world hungry for spectacle. And Tyson didn't stop. He dismantled them in waves, each movement precise, efficient, devastating. Every hook cracked ribs, every jab snapped heads, every counter turned momentum into destruction. He wasn't just fighting, he was teaching. With each man that fell, the lesson rang clearer. Hate couldn't beat discipline. Numbers couldn't beat mastery. The gang had walked into a ring they couldn't survive, and Tyson, calm and unbroken, stood in the center of it all, like a storm made flesh. The leader trembled, watching his army crumble. His body ached, his pride screamed, but still he staggered forward. "This ain't over," he bellowed, his words slurred through broken teeth. "I'll finish it myself." Tyson turned slowly, his eyes locking on the man who had started it all.